Well, it's the science of life that was given to us from the Vedas, which are thousands of years old, and it's a way of approaching life, recognizing that we're part of nature rather than separate from it. And we've been raised and programmed to think that we need to conquer nature. It's something to overcome, and Ayurveda looks at us as part of it. And it's really, when we talk about the science of life, it is every aspect of life, everything that we consider, the things that we consider separately. Our mind is over here, and our body is over here, and our spiritual life is here. And in Ayurveda, it's all one, all together. So, yeah. Well, I was introduced to yoga first. And when I was first introduced to Ayurveda, I thought, oh, it's too complicated, and I'm doing okay. And then some things were going on, and people kept making suggestions to me, and I tried it. I tried ghee, and it made such a huge difference in my life. And it really made life make sense to me. There were so many things that I was doing, and I was trying to feel good and to be healthy, and I was having difficulties. And so when I came to Ayurveda, then I started to be able to understand that it was possible to not feel the way I was feeling, that I could feel well on an ongoing basis. Leading an Ayurvedic lifestyle means that I'm going to live my life in concert with nature, that I'm going to be in the flow of nature. So, for example, that would be understanding as a woman, understanding the menstrual cycle, that it is a cycle, and that it's going to happen regularly, and that it's connected to the cycle of the moon. So these are the kinds of things that mean living an Ayurvedic lifestyle. And also, it's everything that we do matters. Everything we do on a daily basis. So understanding our choices and how it's affecting us, this is what Ayurveda gives us. So it gives us the opportunity to live life in a really fabulous way and understand what's happening and not feel like we're at the mercy of someone else. And because we really all have the intelligence within us. And so that's what it means. So it's not about rules. It's about understanding our choices and then deciding, how wise do I want to be today? Right. Well, this is one of the things in Ayurveda, is that first we always look to the root cause of a problem, and we remove the root cause, and then we find that our body and our mind and our spirit all want to come back to a state of balance. So that's one point. But when we're in it, there are many things that Ayurveda offers. For example, there are teas that are made from spices that can help bring balance to the situation. Making sure you have a regular schedule of eating and sleeping. These are all things that make a big difference in our lives. So they can our actions each day can either cause more imbalance or support our body and mind to come back to a state of balance. So we call the elements the Pancha Mahabhutas, the 5 elements. Pancha means 5. And you could think of it that it is the energy that's moving through all of nature. And nature, we call it in Sanskrit, Prakriti. And so these elements, if you think about it, well, earth, we can relate it to what's around us, but we can relate it to our body, for example. So earth is the physical parts, our bones and our muscles, things like that. And then there's the water element. Well, we know we're made up of water primarily, maybe 3/4. And then there's the fire element. Well, the fire element shows up in a couple of ways. One is our ability, for the body to heal. In other words, if I cut myself, it knits back together. That's the fire of transformation. But it's also the fire of digestion, that we can digest life and what we put in to our five senses. And so, in other words, not just what we put in our mouth, but it's what we listen to, what we look at, what we put on our skin. All of these things make a difference, and they affect us. They affect our body and our mind. Yeah. And then, there's air. Well, we know we need to breathe, and there's air in there, and you know what it's like if you get too much air in there. For example, if you have gas after eating something that didn't agree. Yeah, and then we have, but there should be a certain amount in there. There needs to be a good amount that's right for the body. And then there's something called the ethers or space. And this space then is also something that gives us a reference point for our physical body. Otherwise, we wouldn't know it was there. You know, so most of us will think of space and we think of nothing, yeah, or just blackness and that. But there's much more to it than that. It's actually space that defines the rest of our physical nature, and also but it is also the unseen. Uh, so, in other words, if I take my hands and I give them a little rub and I move them toward each other, I feel my energy. Yeah, and that's the energy. But and there's space here, right? Yeah. So it's good to sort of play with the elements so that you can start to understand them. I know when I started, I didn't understand it at all, and even though I had studied science, modern science, extensively, but once I studied that in the sense of, you know, not book learning, but looking around and paying attention in life, that this is what really made a difference. And then you start to see yourself in a whole new way. And that's what Ayurveda brings to us. Yeah. Yeah. So these doshas of Vata, Pitta, and Kapha, well, the word dosha, the translation really literally would be that which is messed up. So the reason that we have dosha is because it's a way of describing how the elements, the five elements, function in us. And so we probably wouldn't need to talk about them if they didn't go out of balance. They'd just be doing what they do. But when they do, we need to be able to describe it. And there are very distinct patterns of how these elements are present in us. And so that's what the doshas are. So vata is the air and ethers, the space. And then pitta is the fire and water elements, right? So the water elements in pitta show up primarily as acids in the digestive tract. Because we need enough of that, but not too much of it. And then the earth element is, the kapha dosha then is earth and water. So we need the earthiness for our stability. And then we need the water because that's how things flow. So we have a flow of nutrients, for example, through the bloodstream. And so that's what the doshas mean. And so they help us to understand where are the elements present and where are they present where maybe they shouldn't be. And then this is how we come to understand how the body functions. Each of us has all three doshas in us, right? So if you think about how I've described it, but then it's a matter of how much. So at the moment of our conception, we get a unique amount that is ours. And we get to live with that all this lifetime. But then life is happening in utero, we're birthed. And so we're always, so that if that's my constitution, we call it prakriti, also like nature, then I'm continually either moving toward that state of balance or away from it. Now, it's not one point to think, oh, it has to be just like that. It's really a matter of sort of being in the neighborhood. And when you're in the neighborhood of your own constitution, then you don't have symptoms. You don't have all those things that we've come to accept as a normal part of life, that you actually feel good and you feel vibrant and you have a sense of unlimited energy, but the ability to manage it properly, and so that you don't burn out and get exhausted and things like that. Yeah. 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 So yeah. So these are some of the tools. Actually, there are even more than those tools that are a part of Ayurveda. So you have a sense of how complete a science it is. There's surgery. There's a complete what we would call medical approach to to healing any problems or ailments. Yeah. So the most powerful, though, that for us in daily life that make a difference is the ahar, which is the diet, and because we are what we eat, we what we consume, what we put in our mouth, is becomes our body tissue, either well or not so well, and then our lifestyle, everything we do makes a difference. So I mentioned having a regular schedule of eating and sleeping. This makes a huge difference in how much energy you have. See, so if you're being irregular with these things, your energy is actually going to be lower, which is why so many people like to put caffeine in to try to pump things up and keep going. And what we're doing at that point is really depleting ourselves. So then understanding the effects of our lifestyle and being able to make a wise choice about that. So we use herbs in terms of spices in our cooking, and this is really the most powerful place to use herbs. But we also have other medicinal herbs that we might not like to use in our cooking. And so we use these fairly extensively, but we don't do too much of that until we make the dietary and lifestyle changes, because the herbs are very powerful, but they're not a drug. And if the basis isn't there, then we can't really get the effect of the herbs. And so we use herbs, though, on a regular basis. We use them also for acute situations, and so sometimes for relief. But most of the time, the way herbs are given from an Ayurvedic standpoint is to support the body to come back to its natural state of balance, which it knows how to do. So it's a very different approach than Western herbalism, for example, which is to act on the body. And then you mentioned home remedies, and those home remedies they used to be called the kitchen remedies, because it really was a matter of taking what you had in your kitchen and then utilizing that in a medicinal way. So, for example, we might take something like turmeric and put it into some hot water with salt and gargle that for a sore throat. So very simple things like that make a huge difference, and that can actually move you through something, and not have to go see somebody else to do that. Uh, and then we mentioned massage, and so really let's talk about it in terms of treatments. So there are extensive treatments that we use in Ayurveda that are, and actually massage isn't even actually a proper word from an Ayurveda standpoint, but it's what we're accustomed to. So, but we do treatments using herbs and oils. Sometimes it might be, depending on what the problem is, and that you might have herbs, crushed herbs, with rubbed on your body, and then get wrapped up in a banana leaf. And then there are things where the oils, are decocted with herbs, and so those oils then can be used. They're used externally, they're used somewhat internally, and so there's a variety of treatments. And you mentioned the massage, though, because the marma, which are points in the body where there are intersections of energy, and sometimes this is where things get stuck. And so we have very powerful but gentle marma treatment that is done, but it's also considered when oil is applied to the body. Uh, so then marma is something that it's very extensive, but one can easily do marma points on yourself. So the easiest ones are related to the face and the head, and they're often considered with people who are doing massage in that. But it can be the touch can be actually extremely gentle, very light, and so you might start here and you would work here. So there's a whole very simple sequences that can be given. And then we also now have some points of working, touching the body, but also not touching the body. So working with the ethers to help clear the electromagnetic energy that is comes around. I mentioned that we are what we eat because when we eat food and we actually digest it, it becomes body tissue. It can also be not well digested and it becomes toxins. And those toxins combined with imbalance in the dosha and our inability to digest properly then creates disease. And that's one of the reasons we have so much disease present now. In my lifetime, it's changed very dramatically. Young people used to not be sick when I went to school. When I went to school, if somebody missed a day of school, everybody was talking about it because it was such a rare thing. So then understanding that it makes a difference what I put in my mouth, then I need to make that connection between what I'm putting in my mouth and how I feel. And this is something that we've gotten very attached to, that short-term pleasure hit on our tongue. And so this is something that Ayurveda helps us understand extensively, the notion of cause and effect. What's this doing to me? And so we have this thing in us called Agni, our digestive capacity. And it's not just our capacity to digest food, it's our capacity to digest life. So for example, if I'm angry about something and I'm really hanging on to that, then this is going to disturb my ability to digest food, and vice versa. So these things all make a huge difference in how I feel on a day-to-day basis, and how I look, because the body responds to whatever is happening with the body and the mind. And this is the other thing that's so important now, is that when we don't digest well, we're eating processed foods, we're having irregular diet, things of that nature, then it's going to affect the capacity of my mind. And so the mind is not able to stay stable. And then life isn't as pleasant. And what's really important is that we are meant to feel well in life. We're not meant to spend our time going to the hospital, going to the doctor, and doing those kinds of things. This is a significant imbalance in life. What's really important is everything you do throughout the cycle. So having a balanced meal, we have something we call a balanced bowl to help you understand the proportions of food. And the proportions of types of food are related to the elements that we were talking about, right? Because if you take in elements, then you need to have elements that are going to bring balance to the elements inside of you. So, and so what you do on a daily basis is what makes all the difference. But when you come around your period or your moon time, then things can, if things don't feel well, then having very simple food. So things like what we call kunyi, or a simple soupy rice with some spices and ghee and salt. This is something that will allow you to have some nourishment, so you can have some energy, but also not challenge your system any more than what's already happening with it. We call it the moon time. So the moon time is a time where your body is cleansing. It's attempting to let go, and so we need to just allow that to happen easily. But if there's a lot of trash in the way, then it's hard. And so sometimes people have cravings and things like that, and so there are very specific things that you can do. Having having a little bit of ginger tea, having some teas and those are the simplest things. But most important is just having balanced food and not following the cravings. You know, the cravings are taking you into a greater state of imbalance. I know sometimes people want to talk about that cravings are something that, oh, it means my body needs it. Occasionally that could be the case, but most of the time, what happens is that we have this principle in nature called like attracts like. So that means that if I have an excess of something, then a dosha element, then I'm going to crave more of that when it's out of balance. And so it's going to continue to take me out of balance, away from that neighborhood that is my best feeling. So not following those cravings is what works the best. But, we find that people are able to, they'll make changes in a matter of weeks. Then their next cycle is already different. And it's already that much better. The real power is in the ability to create, right? I realize that there's a lot of focus now on menstruation, and it's really wonderful to have women talking about it so that we can understand it better. But our power is in the power to create. By having the organs, by having this body, and we have an energy. There's a very specific energy related to this. And one of the things that we need to do is to understand how to bring that energy into our own body and work with it. And then this helps us to make the choices that has us have a menstrual time or a moon cycle that is just an integral part of our cycle. Yeah, so that we're not just understanding it sort of on a mechanical level, I ovulate and then I menstruate, but it's very much about following the cycle of the moon and seeing, oh, when I do these things, my cycle moves off, it moves away from the moon, and so just understanding it. And it's not about being perfect about it, but it is about understanding ourselves and then doing the very best for ourselves so that we can then create in the world, whether you're creating a baby or you're creating in everything in life, you see. So that's where the real power is. And yes, understanding the moon time is important because it is a part of all that. But our real focus is to understand what to do with that creative energy. Yeah. And yes, it's for procreating, but it's also for us to be present in life in a bigger way. And how it changes then is that we still have that energy. We still have that energy in us. It's just that we're not, let's see, we think about it on a hormone level. Those hormones that aren't being created by the ovaries anymore, the adrenals and your brain make those same hormones. And so that's the whole point, is if you're not exhausted and depleted, then you move into menopause and you move through that with ease. And then you come into a very vibrant time of life. Yeah, and that's what it's meant to be. That's what you hear the word crone, and you hear these words from various cultures around the world talking about older women. Well, that's what we're meant to be. But it's a different way of looking at life in general. That it's a very significant part of life because we're here to offer our wisdom. We're here to also to go inward, to understand ourselves, and to have that spiritual connection, as we pass through this life and on to the next. Yeah. Yeah, sleep is important. Sleep is when we do our best healing. And we talked about the doshas, there are doshic times of day. And so this is why we recommend that you go to sleep by 10 o'clock at night and you get up by 6. This is what will give you optimum healing. And then also in the morning, it'll give you the most energy through the day. because you're getting up at certain doshic times of day. Yeah, so that's one of the things that makes a big difference. And then if you're putting a lot of stimulants into your body and you have trouble sleeping, well, we have cause and effect. But the sleep schedule keeps Vata dosha calm. Going before Pitta comes up at night, yeah, I don't know if you've ever had the experience of after 10 o'clock at night, you get lots of energy, and then maybe you want to eat and do things, and that's Pitta. But that's when we're meant to be healing. That's when the body and the mind do their best healing. So when we're up during that time, we miss that. So that's how important sleep is. Now, sometimes people get really out of balance. We have herbs that help. There are teas that help. Having a little warm milk with some cinnamon and nutmeg in it, a little bit of a sedative quality. Sometimes those things are very, very helpful. So there's a pranayama called yoni mudra, and it's drawing in the senses. So you're actually covering the eyes, and we won't close the nostrils at this point, but we can start here and here and here, and so you can see. I'm going to keep my mouth closed, and then I put the tips of my thumbs actually into the ears. And so this helps you to draw all the senses inward. And you want to keep your shoulders relaxed and breathe very slowly. So starting with 10 breaths, working up to 30, very slow inhale and exhale. And if one is feeling anxious, then you would exhale twice as long as the inhale. And yes, you need to count. And it's great because that occupies the mind. And this is how we can start to draw things inward and calm the mind down. Deep nourishment comes from a number of places. So how you interact with life through your five senses. So we talk about deep nourishment comes when we actually can digest food. Deep nourishment comes when Agni is functioning properly, because then when challenging things happen in life, I'm able to walk through them instead of shutting down, for example. But deep nourishment also is that time, for example, of doing yoni mudra, being inward and sitting in meditation then for 5 minutes. This is what brings real nourishment to us, because then we start to see, I'm not my mind, and I'm not even my body. Yeah, but I'm more than that, and these are my tools for expression. And when I can have that sense of peace, then this is something really, really, really special that takes us through life. The feminine, to me, it's our intuitive, loving part. When I look at masculine and feminine energy, so different than girl and boy, there are men and women. These energies have different qualities. So the masculine energies then are things that have us make life easier on the outside, that outer interaction. And the feminine is the internal. And we've had a lot of imbalance on the planet for a good while now, and so now we have an opportunity to bring that back. And so when I first started to learn about this, I was very oriented toward the external, but then coming to understand that really the imbalances that we have in society, not just in women but in men, have to do with our only valuing the masculine qualities. And so we need to value those feminine qualities and recognize that the intellect is not the only important thing. The intuition is what brings the balance to the intellect and keeps it from doing stupid things. Otherwise, we do things that create lots of imbalance in the world. And so you can think about that in terms of everything on the planet, all the way down into our individual lives and how we conduct ourselves on a daily basis. Yeah, I mean, it's just, and so the feminine is the part of us that has compassion and is able to be accepting and see other people's point of view. And we need both. We all need both. And it's just a matter of how much we're running at any point in time. They both have it. We all have it. Yeah. And then it's a matter of how much. You know, a female body, by virtue of having these organs that help us create and that energy, then it makes sense that our body operates the best with a little bit more feminine than masculine, but not this, just a little more. And a male body does really well the other way, with just a little bit more. And so, you know, we want women to find, or I should say, I want women to start to see and understand this in themselves. And this is where our real power comes from. And men need the same thing. They are just as confused, if not more so, these days. Yeah, and this is where Ayurveda and yoga can make such a difference to help us understand that. So you can go to halepule.com, and we're also on Instagram and Facebook, and you can contact us there. And we do consultations, and we have programs, online programs, and we'll in the near future be having in-person program again too. Yeah.